I just received my Z9 mirrorless camera from Nikon. I have fully paid for this camera myself with my own money. I did receive the Z9 earlier than most people because I'm a Nikon professional, and I have been for years. As a professional photographer, I took the time to read the 900-page reference manual. You can read it too, but let me save you some time and give you my top 5 settings to get you up and running faster so you can get out there and start shooting your wildlife images. One of the main reasons to buy the Z9 is the fabulous autofocus system and the 20 frames per second shooting raw images. With the camera's animal eye tracking focus, you're going to be getting better and sharper images of your wildlife than ever before. In this shot of an adolescent red-tailed hawk, I was able to knock out 45 shots of the bird launching from its perch, all while the animal eye focus kept locked on the eye of the bird. As good as this camera is, it doesn't come out of the box ready to shoot wildlife images. The first thing I do, and this doesn't count towards my top 5 because all new Nikons come with this default on the cameras. In the setup menu, the one that looks like a little wrench, scroll down to slot empty release lock. Navigate to the right and put that on lock. Because if you don't, you'll be able to fire off the camera when there's no card in the slot. Well, this might be good for goofing around with your camera or setting up your camera. If you forget to put the lock on, someday you'll be taking the best photographs of your life and not recording them to the card. Put that lock on and then just delete your test images later. Number 1, set up back button focus. I like to use back button focusing for all my work. I've had it on all my cameras set up this way, and for me, it's the only way to go. If you're not sure you want to start using this way of shooting, check out Steve Perry's video on back button focus. Steve was a guest of mine on my podcast, and he's super knowledgeable on wildlife photography and explains back button focus in great detail. I'll put a link below so you can go check out that video. For now, I'll show you how to set up your Z9 for back button focus. First, go into Custom Settings menu. It looks like a little pencil, and then scroll down to Controls. It's labeled with the letter F. Go to Custom Controls for shooting, scroll to the right, and then scroll around until you find the back button focus button highlighted. I use the AF on button for this, though you can assign other buttons if you like. Once it's highlighted, hit the OK button and assign a function to it. I make sure it's on AF on. Next, go to your AF button found on the front of the camera. You can access it with a finger from your left hand while looking at the screen. Press it and scroll with the thumb wheel to AFC. This will put your camera on continuous focus mode. This is perfect for wildlife subjects. Go back to the main custom settings menu and scroll up to autofocus. It's labeled with an A. On A1, it has AFC priority selection. Move to the right and select release. This will tell the camera to make sure you take a picture no matter what. If you put it on focus, the camera won't fire unless the image isn't focused. I don't want the camera making me wait for any reason. It doesn't always know what I want to shoot, so I want it to fire when I press the release button without restrictions. Next, scroll down to A6 and you'll see that it says AF activation. Scroll to the right to set your camera to focus only when you press the AF button, the AF on button. Now you're all set up with back button focusing. You now have total independence from the shutter button when it comes to focus. Press for focus or don't press it to not have the camera change the focus. Number 2, set up your camera for 3D animal eye tracking. Go to the menu for photo shooting menu, the little camera icon, scroll down till you get to AF, area mode. Scroll to the right and you'll see all kinds of options for your AF area mode. I like to use 3D tracking, so I place it on that mode. Then track to the left with the selector pad and you're back at the main photo shooting menu. Here, scroll down one time and get to AF subject detection options. Your choice is going to be automatic, people, animal, vehicle, and subject detection off. I put mine on animal, and it shows a little head of a cat. Now you have your focus set for eye tracking of your wildlife images. This will improve the sharpness of all your wildlife and nature images. I will soon be releasing a new ebook, Razor Sharp Wildlife. As a professional photographer, I get asked all the time how to get those super sharp images of wildlife subjects. The challenge of razor sharp images can be quite an elusive goal. So I've created a book that will take you through all the steps to getting those razor sharp images. And since it's an ebook, you can take it with you into the field and get step-by-step instruction while you're out shooting. The book is going to be full of tips and tricks about getting the sharpest images possible on all your wildlife and nature images. You can look for it over at my website, imagelight.com. Go to Digital Products page and check out the products that I have for sale on the site. I'll leave a link below so you can check it out. Number 3, turn off touch shutter. As with all these settings, it comes down to personal preference. And with touch shutter, this is my preference. With the new Z9, the default is to have the touch shutter turned on. This is where you can tap the screen on the back to fire off a shot. I don't find this very useful, so I turned it off. Instead, I use the position focus point. This will allow me to touch the screen to set a focus point. This is very useful when I'm composing a landscape scene entirely on the back of the monitor, especially if I'm setting up a focus stack. Here's how you change it from the default of firing off the shot when you tap the screen. Up near the viewfinder is a button that says DISP for display. Every time you press this, it'll cycle through one of 5 display screens. This is essentially showing you more or less on the back of the screen, plus a virtual horizon tool. The first screen has all your information on it. On the lower left side of the screen is a little icon with a fingertip in a box. When you tap on this icon, the activity of the screen will change. So you can have the screen be able to take a photo, which I don't care for, or you can completely turn that off. The 2 other options are for touch AF autofocus or for touch for placing the focus point. I find this second option to fit how I shoot. So I just use the touch to pick a point, and then I use the AF button to focus it on. Number 4, set control buttons. Like in most modern cameras, there's the ability to set buttons on your camera to all kinds of different settings. One of the settings I like to set is Function 1 button. This button is easily accessible with your middle finger from your right hand while shooting. So I assign another mode of focus for it. You can do this by going to the menu, scrolling to Custom Settings, the little pencil icon, then scrolling down to the controls, the letter F, scroll right and down to Custom Controls Shooting. This will take you to small drawings of your camera with yellow highlights on the customizable buttons. Scroll to find FN1 and hit the OK button. This will bring you up to a huge list of things that you can assign to that button. I set mine on AF area mode, and then I scroll down to Dynamic Area AFS. This is a small area of focus. I like this because there are times when you may not want to use the eye tracking feature, namely when you're setting up a landscape shot. Eye tracking is a bit frustrating. So having another easily accessible button that I can use for a different style of focus really helps with your wildlife photography. Number 5, setting up an exposure mode button. Needless to say, you can reset lots of buttons on the camera. And one other one that I do is to change the video record button. It's the red dotted button on the top of the camera used for starting a video. However, if you're not in video mode, I like to use it for changing my metering mode. For my wildlife shooting, I like to switch between aperture preferred and manual exposure modes. This makes it really handy to switch between modes by pressing the button and moving the thumb wheel in the exposure mode that I want to use. And now that button is useful to me in the photo mode because it still works for starting video when I'm in the video mode. The same drill as before. Go into Custom Settings, go down to the letter F, scroll to the right to Custom Controls Shooting. Scroll around until you find the video button is highlighted and then assign it to the exposure mode. The bonus tip I'll share with you is creating a My Menu. Here you can place all the menu items that you need to access from time to time. For instance, in my Menu, I have access to silent mode. For shooting silently out in the field, this is a great tool. But when you're doing things like a focus stack, it's nice to hear the camera make a little bit of a sound. That way you know when your stack is done. I also keep my video white balance accessible here, my autofocus mode, my focus shift shooting, and to set picture control. You can place whatever you like into your own My Menu. The pro tip I have for you is to program one of your camera buttons to take you instantly to your My Menu. I've programmed FN4. It has a little key icon at the top back of the camera. That way, very quickly, I can zip right to my menu and do the changes that I need to do. You can do this by programming it in the same spot you did under Setting Control Buttons. I set the FN4 button to go straight to my menu. If you're interested in nature and wildlife photography and like to listen to this kind of content when you're driving or working, check out my podcast. It's cleverly named The Nature Photography Podcast. It can be found on just about any of the top podcasting apps. Just do a search for The Nature Photography Podcast. Make sure to include the word "the" in the search and then look for the bald eagle logo. One little tip that I might have glossed over is that one of the quick menus I use is for setting up picture control. Now, most of you may already know that setting picture control is pretty useless since it only affects JPEG images. I primarily shoot RAW images, like most professionals. This setting would have little effect on my images. It only has an effect on what you see in the viewfinder or on the monitor. Here's how I use it. I set my picture control on standard for the bulk of my shooting. That way I get a decent image on the screen when I'm shooting. However, I occasionally like to shoot images I know to be intended to be processed as black and white images. I can set my picture control to monochrome, and now the viewfinder shows me the black and white look in the viewfinder and on the monitor screen. This is helpful for me to see how the colors will be rendered in black and white, so it will improve my composition. When the images come up in Lightroom, they're all going to be back to color since I was shooting in RAW, and that's okay. I'm going to convert them anyway in Lightroom. If you want to see how I convert images to black and white, check out my video on my black and white workflow. I'll put a link up here so you can check it out. I hope this was helpful for you setting up your new Z9 for wildlife photography. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and the little bell to be notified when I release my next video. I will also look forward to your comments below and let me know what your favorite settings are on the new Z9. Until next time, this is Terry Vanderheyden.